So we left off yesterday with a question, just a little entertainment before we start, which is why Parshas Korach starts with a kuf. Remember we asked this question yesterday. Chukas has a kuf in the middle, and Balak ends with a kuf. So is there any way to turn that one off and turn something else on that doesn't make noise? Just put on all the other ones. That one is something problematic. And just, if you could, Steve, maybe use a chair. Right over there, there's a chair. Right there, Steve. And just so we get some air without making ourselves deaf. Get this place working properly. So we'd asked yesterday why you have the kufs in different places. So one of the commentaries says that Korah, the Gemara in Shabbos. Thanks, Steve. The Gemara in Shabbos says that there are different letters allude to different things. For example, the Gemara says Gimel Dalid. Gimel stands for Gimol, and Dalid stands for Dalim. Gimol Dalim, Gimol like Gemilus Chasadim. Gimel Dalid is Gimol Dalim, do for the poor, like Gemilus Chasadim. And the Gemara goes through every letter in the Aleph Beis of what it stands for. And the Kuf, according to the Gemara, Kuf stands for Kadosh, which is obviously the first thing you think of when you think of letter Kuf. So in Parshas Korach, the Kuf comes first. Because what happened? Korach started out good. He was a Kadosh. He carried the Aron Kodesh. But then it went downhill from there. So the Kuf was at the beginning, and then the rest of the letters followed. Chukas starts out plain, and then we get to the Parah Aduma, to the red cow. The red cow is what takes a person who's tamei and makes him tor. So the Kedusha is in the middle, and then after that it goes down again. So the Kuf is in the middle of Parshas Chukas. And then Balak starts out no good. He's the king of Moab, but it ends with Kedusha. Where is the Kedusha of Balak? He has a very famous descendant. You know who his descendant is? Rus, the Moabite, Rus, who converts to Kal Yisrael and becomes the mother of David HaMelech, the grandmother of David HaMelech, the great-grandmother of David HaMelech. So Rus, and the great-great-grandmother of Shlomo HaMelech, and by the way, she was alive at the time of Shlomo, because I'll say that Shlomo HaMelech put there was a seat next to him where Rus sat when Shlomo HaMelech was the king, which is a great-great-grandmother. So Balak starts out no good, which we'll see in a second. It ends up with a Kuf, which is Kedusha, that eventually comes from Balak. Okay, that's just a little entertainment. Now, the parsha begins like this: Vayar Balak es ben Tzipor es kol asher asa Yisrael le'Amori. Balak is the king of the Amorite of Moab, and he sees what the Jewish people have done to these two Amori kings, Sichon and Og. Now, Sichon and Og are very, very mighty kings. So Balak sees and they were supposed to be the final protection against the Jewish people, and Balak sees what has happened to them. Now, I saw it just interesting, because it's always interesting to see how timeless the Torah is, that Balak sees what the Jewish people have done to these two kings. It's almost like a prophetic, in those days there were other wars. Plenty of wars were being fought. Everything's wars all over the world. And what does Balak say? What the Jews do. He says what the Jews do. And you see that nowadays. Russia's trashing the Ukraine, and the Hutsis or Tutsis are getting slaughtered somewhere in Africa. But the Israelis, the Israelis broke a fence somewhere and bombed something in Syria. Even the Russian foreign minister came out after the last bombing. Israel bombed something in Syria, and the Russian foreign minister said Israel is guilty of human what do you call it? Human. What's it called? Human rights violations. Yeah, Russians are doing goodness knows what in Ukraine, and the Israelis and the Jews are guilty of human rights violations. If you could go and bomb and do and this, that, and the other, bomb schools, do whatever you want, and if a Jew in Israel puts out a balcony, builds an extra balcony on his house, the whole world, the United Nations Security Council gets together. So this is just like, you see that Balak, the whole world is that there are plenty of wars in the old days. He sees what the Jews did. What Yisrael did to the Amori. Okay, now the truth of the matter is he's nervous. He's obviously nervous. And Vayogar Moav Mipnei Havo, the Moavites are afraid of the people. Ki Ravu. Vayokotz Moav Mipnei Yisrael. Bnei Yisrael and Moav is, the word Vayokotz is more like they're annoyed of the Bnei Yisrael. So you have two things happening here. Number one, they're afraid of the people because there are a lot of them. That's a physical fear. Vayokotz Moav Mipnei Bnei Yisrael. But they're annoyed by the Bnei Yisrael. And this is also a understanding of anti-Semitism. They're bothered by the essence of the Bnei Yisrael. The world is bothered by us. They're bothered by our very existence. Because it was no less a person than Hitler. He should rest in pieces. It was no less than Hitler who said, the Jews are the conscience of mankind. And the world sees that's why they're holding us to a different standard. They expect Jews to fight wars differently and not to go bombing schools and just carpet bombing. Can you imagine in the United States if Mexico would be shooting missiles into the United States? You think they'd be going door to door fighting in Mexico? They turn the whole place. They turn the first 20 miles of Mexico into a parking lot. That's what they would do. So there are missiles being shot in from Gaza. So anybody in the world understands. You go in and you flatten a couple of square miles over there, a base or a base core, right? You go flatten a nice area over there, and then it'll be still like quiet. People, I've been in cabs a lot. I spent a lot of my life in cabs, and cab drivers said to me, "Could you imagine if Putin was running Israel?" Right, and within a week, everything would be straightened out here. Right, I mean, within a week, Gaza would have yellow stripes. You could park any car you want in Gaza. There are no missiles and no this, no that. So we're held to a different standard. Vayokotz Moav mipnei bnei Yisrael. There's an interesting statement. The Gemara says, when it comes to the Jewish people, it says mitoch genusan ata shomea shivchan. From the criticism of the Jewish people, you actually hear their praise. Mitoch genusan ata shomea shivchan. That means sometimes in life, you have a kid in the house who comes home from school, and the parents are upset with him because he got an 89 on a test. If they're upset with him because he got an 89 on the test, that means they tells you what kind of kid he is. That means we're expecting 90s or better. That tells you something. I expect better behavior from you. If you see a frum Jew, and a frum Jew pushes somebody on the bus, so you get, look what he did. Yeah, right. The very fact that you're upset, if he was a Manchester United soccer fan pushing somebody on the bus, you'd be okay as long as he didn't throw him under the bus. Right? Then you're just thrilled. If it's the fact that we're held to such a standard, the fact that we're criticized, what we're criticized for is an indication of who we really are. And mitoch genusan, the Gemara says, from their criticism, Ata shomea shivchan, you hear the praise of the Jewish people. They had an incident here in Israel. I don't know if you guys remember. This is going back, I'm guessing about 20, maybe 25 years ago. They were spray painting. There were inappropriate advertisements on the bus stops, and somebody went around spray painting somebody's bus stops. That made front page news in London. Which word didn't you understand, right? That made front page news in the English newspapers, right? That somebody is spray painting, vandalizing bus stops in Israel. And of course they assumed that it was the ultra-Orthodox. And it turned out it wasn't. It was somebody who was doing it to frame the ultra-Orthodox. But in the grand scheme of things, could you imagine somebody in New York, somebody say, oh, they spray painted the subway walls. Can you imagine? Nobody doesn't make news in New York, right? It's when you throw someone under the tracks on the subway, that might make the news, right? When you get a guy in Highland Park, Illinois, shooting people parading on the 4th of July, that makes the news. In Israel, what makes international news? Because they vandalize. And there was an incident yesterday, July 4th. Some guy, Highland Park, Illinois. It's a suburb near Chicago. There was a big parade. A guy sat on a rooftop. He killed 6 people, shot 30 people, injured 30 people just with a gun. They picked up who they think the guy is. He just what do you call it? He just randomly sprayed them with there were some Lubavitchers there who were putting tefillin on people. They managed to get away. Four boys got away. But so that makes news in America. Can you imagine somebody vandalizing a bus stop in New York? Nobody's going to make. They're just going to say, well, good morning, New York. That's what you expect. So mitoch genusan. So the nations look at us, And they're jealous of us because they see our moral standards. They see what we are. And that's Vayakotz Moav B'pnei B'nai Yisrael. Now, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? So we got a problem over here. Balak has a problem. So what does Balak do? Vayomer Moav el Ziknei Midyan. Ata Yelachachu HaKol is Kol Zivusena. They're going to look up the surroundings. Kilchoch Hashor is Yerek Asad, like an ox licks up, consumes the vegetables of the field. Balak ben Sipor Melech LaMoav Beizeh. Balak was the king of Moab, and the Moabite people obviously lost confidence in their king because he has two more powerful kings. And so he sends to one of the most wicked people in history. The Gemara in the Sanhedrin mentions him as somebody who has no portion in the world to come. Vayishlach malachim el Balaam ben Beor Pesora. He sends messengers to Balaam. Asher al hanor eretz b'nei amo likro lo. He sends agents to Balaam. Lemor hine am yotza mimitzrayim. There is a nation that has left Egypt. Hine kisa es ein haaretz. They have covered the view of the land. They're meaning, metaphorically, there are so many of them you can't even see the land anymore. They're all through the desert. Listen, 2.5 million people takes up a lot of space. They've covered the face of the earth. We can't even see the earth, and we'll explain this in a moment. V'hu yoshev bimuli is sitting opposite me. So Balak says to Balaam, he sends a message to Balaam, listen, I got these Jews over here, and now I need you, ve'ata l'chana orali asam, as I curse these people, ki yotzu mimeni. Ulai uchal nakebo, maybe I'll be able to smite him, v'agarshenu mina oretz. Why? Ki yadati es asher tavarich mevorach. I know those of you blessed will be blessed, asher to, or you, or those of you cursed will be cursed. So Gemara says Balaam was a prophet. He was a sorcerer. And God gave the nations a prophet. So the nations can't come along and say, well, listen, if we would have had a prophet like Moshe Rabbeinu, so we'd be good too. So he gave them a prophet. What does this prophet do? He gets involved in all sorts of shenanigans, and he wants to curse the Jewish people. That's the basic storyline here. Now, one of the Mefarshim says, what does it mean when you go back to one pasuk? It says they covered the view of the earth. Kisa es ein haaretz. So the plain meaning, again, is what I told you, that there's so many of them that they're just covering, you can't even see through. You know, you got massive people, you can't see the ground. You know, there's so many of them, you can't see the ground. But I saw one of the Mefarshim says a very interesting insight into a description of what the Jewish people are. Most people live life, by just looking at what's available. You see in front of you, this is what's available, so you live at a very superficial level. Whatever is there, is there. Kisa eseina eretz means that the Jewish people, they cover the view of the earth. In other words, they see what's available, but we're living for something a little deeper and something a little beyond that. In life, there's more to life than cheeseburgers and Slurpees, right? Well, that's available, you know, that's available, and that's what's available on the earth. That's the physical availability of the world. And the Jewish people, kisa eseina eretz, we cover that over. In other words, there's got to be a different purpose. There's got to be a different idea of life. So they go to get Balaam. I'm just going through because we don't have. I just want to get through to the critical part here. They go to these officials go to get Balaam, and they say that they want Balaam to join up to come and curse the Jewish people. And then skip ahead to Pasuk Tes. Vayovo Elokim el Balaam, God appears to Balaam, top of 858. Vayomer Mia Anoshim Ha'elimach, who are these people are with you? Vayomer Balaam El Elokim, Balak ben Sipor Melech Moav Sholach Elai. Balak, the king of Moab, sent for me. And the Pirkei Avos says Balaam was haughty. He had tremendous desires, and he was resentful of other people. He had every bad character trait known to man. And God says, who are these people? And I said, well, Balak, the king of Moab, sent to me. So, Balaam missed it. He missed it. God didn't know who these people were. God said, so who are these people, Balaam? Balaam didn't know who these people are. What went wrong here? What was the mistake in communication by Balaam? Balaam heard a question when in fact it was a statement. It was a statement in question form. or what we'd call even a rhetorical question. God says, who are these people? It's like a father says to his son, who are you hanging around with? And the son goes and answers his father, well, there's Tommy and Jimmy and Johnny, all former convicts. Yeah. And the father, when he knew who these guys are, he said, hey, who are you hanging around with? That means don't hang around with them. That was a rhetorical question. God says, hey, who are these guys? And it was, oh, well, Balak, as a matter of fact, that's a mistake. And by the way, I've told you in marriage, you don't answer a wife's question because she's not asking questions, Moshe, right? She's not asking you a question. When your wife says to you, why did you go to the refrigerator? Why did you just walk across the floor? I just washed it. The response is, oh, well, I had to get to the refrigerator to get a beer. That's not the correct response. The correct response, why did you walk across the floor when I just washed it, is, I am sorry, I apologize, I'm an inconsiderate boor, and I deserve the same fate as the goat on Yom Kippur. That's the correct response. You don't say because she wasn't asking you a question. That was not a question. It was a statement in question form. When she said, why did you walk across the floor? Or why didn't you call to tell me you're going to be home late? Or why did you forget our anniversary again? That's not a question. That means you are an inch away from waterboarding. That's what it really means. And waterboarding will be nothing, will be child's play compared to what you're going to go through if this happens again. That's what she is saying. And the correct response is, I am sorry, I am an inconsiderate boor, and so on and so forth. I once read in Reader's Digest, what are the 3 words a woman wants to hear most? No, whatever else it is, it ain't that.
You were wrong.
Huh?
You were wrong.
You were right is the second most. I was wrong. I love you, trash. Who says it? I care about that. I was wrong. Those are the words. She loves hearing that. And the reason is, I'll explain to you why. You should pay me for this. The reason is because women suspect that men are immature babies, which is true. And we have an ego, which is true. And we can never admit we're wrong, which is true. And when she sees when you're actually admitting you're wrong, that means you're maturing. Now, my wife has obviously never heard those words, right? She's heard me say you were right, or you are right, but to say I'm wrong, that ain't going to happen. It just is not going to happen. So the best I can do is you are right. So when Hashem comes to Balaam and says, who are these people? Hashem doesn't know who they are. Well, you thought he was asking you a question. You really thought he was asking you a question? He wasn't asking you a question. He was trying to make you, it's like God said to Adam Rishon, where are you? What happened? He said, oh, the woman did it. It was the woman. She gave you something to eat. That wasn't a question. God was allowing Adam at that moment to turn around and do tshuva. He said, hey, what happened? Did you eat from the fruit? It was the woman. Yeah, she did. Right there, Adam should say, you know what? I did wrong. That would have been tshuva. Would have taken care of the whole thing. And instead, he understands, well, yeah, blame somebody else. God says, what are you doing? What are you doing? Who are these guys? Oh, well, Balak sent to me, and so on and so forth. So now look what happens over here. It's very, very strange. So God says to Balaam right away, Vayomer Elokim el Balaam, lo selech imahem, don't go with them. Lo sor es ha'am ki baruchud. I'm going to show you something remarkable. And so Balaam says to the guy, Hashem refuses to let me go with you. Why? So he said, well, you're not good enough. I need higher officials. For a man of my stature, I require higher ranking officials. Wow. So look what happens. They go home, and Balak sends more. Look at Pasuk 6:15. Vayosef od Balak shaloach sorim rabim v'nichbadim me'elu. He sends more and much more honorable officials. Vayavo el Balaam vayomer lo kol ma'abach v'tzibur al natimna me'aloch elai. Don't refrain. Ki kabeda chabedcha me'od, I'll honor you, v'chol asher tomar elai eseh. Ulechona kavali esam hazeh. We're going to read a few more psukim, and then we're going to put it all together. Vayan Balaam, vayomer el avdei Balak. Balaam says to the servants of Balak, Im yita li Balak milo beso kesef zav. If Balak would give me a house full of gold and silver, lo uchal avor es pi Hashem elokai lasos tanogla. I can't go against God. So what happens? Look at the next pasuk. Vayavo Elokim el Balaam laila. Balaam says, now look very, very carefully here, because we're going to go back and forth now a little bit. Vayomer lo im likro lecha bo anoshim. If these people came to call you, kum lech itam, go with them. The God had just said, don't go, right? Now all of a sudden he says, you could go with them. But you're going to do what I tell you to do. Now I want you to look back for a second. The first time Hashem says not to go with them. Look at Pasuk, it's 5 lines from the top. Vayomer Elokim el Balaam lo seilech imahem. Don't go with them. And look what it says here. Now it says, kum lech itam. Go with them. It doesn't say lech imahem. What's the difference between imahem with them and itam with them? What's the difference between the two? When it comes to imahem, God says, no, you can't go with them. When it says itam, then you could go with them. You know what the difference is? Imahem means a stronger connection. You have one purpose. They want you to go with them to curse. You want to go with them, imahem, that you can't do. They're offering you now to give you honor and money. Lech itam. You could go with them, but at different purposes. They want you to go with for the sake of cursing. You could go with them for your own personal benefits, but not for what they want. That's the difference between imahem and itam. That's what the Vilna Gaon says. Where's the proof? Turn back, keep your finger out of the place, and turn back to the end of Parshas Vayera in Bereshis. Watch this. On page 102. Sorry, page 100. Page 100. It says 3 lines from the bottom. This is by the binding of Yitzchak, by Akedas Yitzchak. Look what it says, 3 lines from the bottom. Vayashkem Avram baboker. Avram gets up in the morning. Page 100, 3 lines from the bottom. Vayachavosh es chamoro. He saddles his donkey. Vayikach es shnei ne'orav ito. He takes his 2 Eliezer and Yishmael, he takes them with him, not Imo, Ito. Why? Because Avraham Avinu knows what he's going for. He's going to slaughter Yitzchak. They don't know what he's going for. They still won't know what he's going for. Ves Yitzchak beno. He goes to where Shem says, nobody, he's the only one who knows that he's been told to. Even Yitzchak doesn't find out till much later. So they're Ito, they're not Imo. Imo means the similar purpose, you're more connected. Ito means you're together, but you have your idea and I have my idea. We're going for different purposes. Look what happens later. Look what happens later. Page 102, second line from the top. Vayomer Avram el Ne'orov shvu lachem po im hachamor. You sit here with the donkey. And Rashi says, Am hadoma lachamor. They're a nation that's similar to donkeys. That means you got a lot in common with donkeys. Right? Some say it's Yishmael. There's a reference to Yishmael. Some say it's reference to Eliezer. Which one of the two he's referring to, whether it's the Canaanites or the Yishmaels. But Imo means a stronger connection, whereas Ito means you're together, we're together, but you're at different purposes. And that's why the bracha we make under the chuppah, what's the bracha we make? Misameach es hachoson im hakala. To gladden the choson im hakala. Not es hakala. Es in Hebrew means with. Es could also mean with. Misameach es hachoson im hakala. That means if a husband and wife build a home with similar goals and purposes, then you're going to have a proper home. Then you're going to have simcha in the home. But if the two of them get married and we're both living in the same home, but we have different ideas, meaning we're both focused on ourselves, then you're not going to have the same simcha. It's got to be as a chosan im hakala, that the chosan and kala have a similar goal. They're united in their purpose in life together. Then they're going to have the simcha in life. So now, Balaam suggests, now there's a big question here, does anybody have a sitter? And is there a sitter available on the table? Any sitter? You got one? Oh, okay, we got one. You got one. Thank you. So, thank you. In Pirkei Avos, there's a famous conversation. There's a man named Rabbi Yossi ben Kisva. Now, we've mentioned him before. This Rabbi Yossi ben Kisva. And the Gemara, the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, this is the 6th chapter of Pirkei Avos. So it says like this. Amar Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma. In the Siddur, it's the 9th Mishnah according to the way the Siddur lists it. Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma, who's one of the Gedolei Hador. So it says, Pam achas ha'isi mahalach b'derech. I was once walking. Upaga bi adam echad v'nosan lishol. A guy greeted me. V'chazarti lo shalom. I greeted him back. Amar li, Rebbe, me'eze makom ata. Where are you from? Amarti lo me'ir gedola shel chachamim v'shel sofer mamri. I'm from a big city of many wise people, Talmidei Chachamim. I come from Bnei Brak. Amar li Rebbe, ritzoncha shetodur imanu bimkomenu. You want to come live with us? V'ani eten lecha 1,000 alofim dinar zahav v'avonim tovos regals. I'll make you a multi-millionaire. Give you millions of pieces of gold and diamonds. Boy, some guys have all the luck. Amarti lo. So I said to him, if you give me all the gold and silver in the world, Torah. I'm not willing to live. I'm only willing to live in a place of Torah. That's the conversation between Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma and this man on the road. Now take a look at Rashi over here. Rashi on the right column on page 8, back on 858. So the last Rashi on the right column, bottom line. Balaam says to the messengers, listen, if Balak would give me a house full of gold and silver, I can't go against the word of God. So take a look at what Rashi says. Milo beso kesef izav, a house full of gold and silver. Says Rashi, labmadu shenafsho rechova. We see that he's a very desirous person. Umechamed mamon acherim. And he desires the money of other people. Balaam says, listen, boy, if he would give me his house full of gold and silver, that means he wanted his house full of gold and silver. So Rashi says in a very, very critical manner of Balaam, listen, boy, if he'd give me all that money, that just means that that's what he shows what he's thinking about. Like, well, whoa, boy. So he's criticized for it. So several commentaries ask, several Farshim ask, I understand. Balaam, for asking for a house full of gold and silver, Rashi says, boy, this guy's got his mind's on money. He likes money. Right? And Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma says, if he give me all the money in the world, I won't go live there. Right? He's talking about all the money in the world. How come he's not criticized? How come Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma isn't criticized? Well, he must be a money lover if that's what he's thinking about. He's thinking about a house full of gold and silver. He's thinking about a world full of gold and silver. So why isn't he criticized? Why is only Balaam criticized? Anybody got? You heard a question. Balaam says, if you give me a house full of gold and silver, I couldn't do it. That means he's thinking about houses full of gold and silver. That means he's into money. He's a money lover. He's a money grubber. He wants other people's money. And Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma says, if you give me all the money in the world, I won't go live there. So he's thinking about all the money in the world. So he loves everybody's money. So who's worse, Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma or Balaam? So how come Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma doesn't get criticized? How come only Balaam is criticized? Balaam's he's a money grubber. You heard it different. You heard a question. What's the answer? You know the story. This guy's called in by I'll tell you the answer. The guy's called in by the Communist Party. So the Communist Party want to test his loyalties. So they say to this guy, comrade, what would you do if you owned a boat? A boat? I'd immediately donate it to the party. Says, what would you do if you owned a mansion? A mansion? I'd immediately donate it to the party. What would you do if you owned a shirt? A shirt? I'd keep for myself. So he said, then I understand. A boat you'd give us, a mansion you'd give us, and a shirt you'd keep. He says, yeah, a shirt I actually own. So Balaam is talking about a house full of gold. A house full of gold is doable. When a guy says for all the money in the world, nobody thinks you're going to get all the money in the world. He's only using it as a figure of speech. Yossi ben Kisma doesn't mean, say, well, do you want to, are you willing to invest? Yeah, if you help me to invest in every building in Manhattan, I'll invest with you. That means I'm not interested in investing with you because it's not doable, it's not realistic. That means I'm not really thinking about it. Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma says, if you give me all the money in the world, I won't go live there. Well, I can't give you all the money in the world. Nobody can give you all the money in the world. So what does it mean? That means that he's being facetious. Balaam's talking about a house full of gold. A house full of gold could happen. If Balak would give me his house full of gold, that could happen. And therefore, that's an indication of what Balaam's focused on. Okay. So, look at the bottom line. Look at the bottom now. Bottom of the, what do you call it? Vayakam Balaam baboker, vayachavosh esasono. Balaam gets up in the morning and he saddles his donkey. Vayelechim sori mod. Does that sentence sound familiar, gentlemen?
Yes.
From where? Okay, same Akedah Yitzchak, same Avram Avinu. What did it say by Avram Avinu? Vayashkem Avram baboker, vayachavosh es chamoro. And here we have Vayakam Balaam baboker, vayachavosh esasono. He saddles his she donkey. Okay, take a look at Rashi. Left column, 4 lines from the bottom. Vayachavosh es asono. What do we see from this? Mikan shehasina mekalkelas es ashura. We see that hatred ruins clear thinking. Hatred distorts clear thinking. Shechavashu be'atzmo. He himself went and saddled his donkey. I told you, you're talking about an important official. Avram Avinu was an important person. He had lots of servants. Avram Avinu, out of his desire to serve God, gets up in the morning and saddles his own donkey. You know what that'd be like? You know what this is like? The President of the United States gets up and pumps gas into his own limousine. The President of the United States gets up and he's pumping gas into his own limousine. Yeah, I'm sure he's got people to fill up the limousine. Yet Balaam goes and Avram Avinu goes and does it. Why? There are 2 things that distort clear thinking. One of them is love, and one of them is hatred. Right? The person falls in love, what they call falling in love, we call falling in car race. Right? But a person falls in love, you're distraught. You're infatuated. Once you're infatuated with somebody, you're clear. That's the worst time to make a decision. Don't marry somebody when you're infatuated. Infatuation disappears very, very quickly. When you like somebody and you have similar goals, that's something else. When you're infatuated, infatuation ends up in lawsuits. That's where infatuation ends. Whereas if you hate somebody passionately, that also causes you to do ridiculous things. You hate somebody so much, you can bring people to murder people. So you have in Israel, you had an entire year of a government that was formed based on one principle, which was hatred of one man. They literally, because they hated one man, Netanyahu, all of them got together to make a government that had no ideals, and they all went against their own ideals. They all basically committed political suicide, because most of them are not going to be around in the next government. Why? Because of a perfect example. And again, I'm not getting into the politics, I'm just showing you a real life example. You see it right in front of your eyes. And as a result, that's where they hit. So Rashi says, Mikan she'asina mekalkel says Ashura, shechavashu ba'atzmo. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem says to Balaam, Rasha, you wicked person, you evil person. Kvar kidamcha Avram Avim. Their forefather Avram has already preceded you. He beat you to it. Shenemar vayashkem Avram baboker vayachavosh es chamoro. That's what the Medrash says. The question is, what's it telling us? What is this telling us? Yeah, Balaam goes saddles his donkey because he's excited to curse the Jewish people because he hates them so much. But you were already offset by Avram Avinu. What's the Torah got to be teaching us something here? It's not just that, oh, what a coincidence. Wow, he offset him. What does that mean he offset him? So Moshe Feinstein says that we are held to a standard. What's the standard we're held to? Right? What standard are the Jewish people held to? You know, let me ask you, gentlemen, I don't know about you, but how do you feel about going to davening in the morning? You know, you're a little tired, and you get there, and you open your sitter, and you're a little bit yawny, and a little bit, and then, how do you feel the same morning if you were getting up to go play tennis, or you're going up to go on a hike, you're going to an amusement park, and all of a sudden things are a little bit different. There's a different level of enthusiasm. It's a different level of enthusiasm. My wife and I were once, years ago, we went on a trip to, we were up in Tveria. Oh, goodness, was it hot. Wow. I remember it was the first time I was in Tveria. I got off the bus, and as I got off the bus the first time I was there, this was the second time I got off the bus the first time I was there, and I thought I was standing. As I got off the bus, I got hit by this blast of heat. I thought I was catching the exhaust from the bus. I was standing in front of the exhaust pipe. So I moved over, nothing changed. It was blistering, absolutely blistering. So my wife and I were up there, and we did a tour that takes you around the Kinneret. And the guy takes you, and there's a bus that goes around, and he drops you off at a certain spot, and then he comes back around. He's supposed to come around a couple hours later, and there's a timing. So I remember we went to see something, and we were right outside. We're standing by the bus stop, waiting for the bus to pick us up on the return. And we're standing in the blistering heat for about 15, 20 minutes, waiting for the bus. Of course, the bus wasn't on time. And right across the street from us was a Luna Park, a water park. You know, we obviously couldn't go into a mixed water park. And all you could hear from this water with a big fence, and all you hear is laughing and joking around and splashing people. And we're standing here in the blazing hot sun. And my wife says to me, we're going back a long, long time. My second year, my wife looked at her and she goes, "This is what Gehenna is like." Wow. Right? You're in the hot, and you're hearing the people over there having fun, and you can't go in. Right? That's what Gehenna is like. So what do you call it? The excitement that they're having in a Luna Park, or the excitement that people are having when they're doing things, their business, people could be making money and they're excited about it. That's the standard we should be maintaining when it comes to Torah and mitzvahs. In other words, they have their passions and they have their pursuits, and they're enthusiastic and excited about it. How enthusiastic were you about putting on tefillin in the morning? How excited were you to go to Gemara Shir? How excited are you to help your mother by washing the dishes on a Motzei Shabbos? How excited all right, I'll do it. We drag our feet. No, we're not supposed to drag our feet. What they do in their pursuits, that's meant to teach us. The Torah is telling us when Avram Avinu is counteracting Balaam, that means Avram Avinu is enthusiastic about going and doing an Akedah. It's not just counteracting Balaam, it's showing us how we're supposed to behave, how we're supposed to treat what we're supposed to do, compared to the various Balaams of the world with what they're doing. And therefore, the Torah is teaching you what the enthusiasm. Now, it's not our fault, because Rav Moshe Feinstein does get on our side he does say, well, just keep in mind, when you fly from Israel to America, how long does it take? When you fly back to Israel, how long does it take? 10. I've been on a 9.5. I made it from America to Israel 9.5 hours. Why is that? The wind. There's a tailwind, what they call a tailwind, right? You're flying against the wind. So you do have to take that into consideration, that when people are doing Averas, they have the tailwind with them. They got the Yetzer Hara with them, right? When we're trying to do mitzvahs, we got the Yetzer Hara against us. So we're going against it. So we do have we're going against the wind as opposed to flying with the wind. So it's not always a fair comparison. On the other hand, it is a standard we're supposed to reach. We're supposed to reach a standard where we're excited about doing Torah and mitzvahs. Not we're doing it because we have to, we're doing it because we want to. That's the passion that Avram Avinu shows, that he gets up in the morning, he's so consumed with his devotion to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that he goes and he saddles his own donkey. Yeah?
What's the difference between Vayashkem and Vayakam?
Vayashkem is getting up earlier. Vayakam is you get up and you're still not as excited. That there's a difference. Even Balaam, who wants to curse, it's still not at the level of Avram Avinu's devotion. Vayashkem is you're getting up earlier, like the Ashkama. Vayakam is you get up. Vayashkem is you're getting up even earlier. Okay. All right. We'll leave this for tomorrow because we're going to get to the donkey. And the donkey's a whole chapter, right? Balaam and his talking donkey, which is where I assume Mr. Ed came from. Like everything else, I don't know, you guys are probably too young. Dave, you remember Mr. Ed, right? Yeah. Jordan, did Mr. Ed mean anything to you? The talking horse, right, on TV? And Mr. Ed, where do they get an idea of a talking horse? Why not a talking turtle? So it's obviously Mr. Ed was what do you call it? A horse is a horse, of course. Yeah, that's, again, one of the signs of a misspent youth.